and 12 of them are new. And on the slide, it says, on the bottom right, there's a picture of a large yellow star with a red outline with large letters that read big changes. That is a big change. And something to keep in mind, Bob and I were just talking about this yesterday, actually today too, I think, that because of the COVID situation, the state legislators or decision makers or elected officials, whatever you want to call them, because of that, because of the COVID situation, they have not spent a lot of time in Springfield. So they still may be very new to a lot of our issues and will need to hear from us. Okay, Megan and Annie.
So as we move forward, and what you're all familiar with is this critical action that you can take, which is, do you want to say? Speak up and speak out. And we're curious as to how many of you have connected with your elected officials. So to tell you what's on the screen here, in the center of the page, there's a drawing in red, blue, and green with the center word reading you and connected circles symbolizing relationships. So if you would go to the raised hand feature, if you have been able to connect with an elected official, whether you do it in person or in writing, we would be interested to hear that.
So I see 3. I think there's probably a couple more than that.
Our hope would be at the end of this that you would feel more confident and more comfortable using different strategies to connect with those elected officials, because that can make a big difference in the outcomes that we have. So we want to briefly review how a bill becomes a law. And there's a big graphic on this screen. It's a cartoon graphic that describes the process of a bill becoming a law. And on there, there's a large government building, 3 individuals talking, leading to a group of individuals sitting around a table with an arrow leading from each question and topic. 3 individuals symbolizing legislators raising their hands while sitting behind a table. Then a path of arrows leading to a cartoon graphic of a piece of paper with a checkbox and words yes and no to symbolize voting. And lastly, a green arrow leading to 3 different legislators sitting behind a table, symbolizing voting or vetoing a bill. And so just to give you some idea, and we'll dig into each step a little bit more, the basic process is citizens or self-advocates like yourself suggest or develop an idea for a bill or a law, something that is needed, that they recognize and they advocate for. Members of the House of Representatives or the Senate propose the bill. So they propose the idea. The House and Senate vote to approve the bill. So both sides vote to approve the bill, and the governor signs the bill. If he chooses not to sign the bill, it is called a veto. If the bill's vetoed, another vote can be taken, but at that point, 2/3 of the House or the Senate have to vote to approve it, and then the bill can become law. So to break that down, Catherine, do you want to talk a little bit about ideas that people have about things that need to be changed?
Yes. So step 1 in how a bill becomes a law is to start with your ideas and think about what needs to be changed. And this is a picture of a light bulb with the word idea lit up in orange inside of the bulb. And I'm sorry I missed asking Bob to explain something a couple slides ago. Bob does have experience with meeting a legislator. And actually, Bob, do you mind telling us about when you went to your legislator and gave him an idea for a bill?
Sure, I'll do that. I went, like Heather said, I went to my, uh, I went to my legislator, which is my representative, and, uh, and, I told, uh, I went to I went to a meeting the with the secretary of DHS last year, and I gave him an idea for the he asked me for what I thought DSPs would be worth, uh, and I
And
told him.
Bob, let me interrupt you for 1 second. When you say DSPs, you're talking about direct support professionals, correct?
Correct. And when and I gave him I said that the right DSPs are they should get they should give $15 an hour raise, and the next day I got an email saying uh, Senator so and so has sponsored bill, and and then I heard it on the news. So so that's how my story is uh, um, that I told them that they needed to do legislation, and the next thing I knew that there was legislation uh, exactly what I said. So that's my story.
That's a great story. It doesn't always happen that fast, though. So we're going to talk some more about the different steps.
I didn't say it worked that fast, but trust me, the next day I saw it, the next day I heard it on the TV.
It's pretty cool. So step 2 is writing the bill, putting the need or idea on paper. And we have here a picture of a cartoon graphic wrapped up white paper bill to symbolize a written law with a cartoon face, a red band around the neck with a red, white, and blue pin that reads bill, waving with the left hand. And you will meet this guy again. If you don't remember him, you will in a few minutes. One thing I wanted to be sure to say is that some of these steps are things that only the elected officials or legislators can do. But we can have input on some of these. And this is another step where we could have input by talking to our legislators. And they might say, well, how would you say that in a bill? They might ask for our input about how to write something. Keep Megan.
Thank you. So after you have gathered your idea and written down and talked to other people who have a similar interest around that idea, you're going to want to reach out and advocate to find a lawmaker who will support that bill. And so what you see in this picture is a photo of a large group of legislators, probably more than 100 is my guess, in a half circle chamber, most in dark suits, sitting at darker wood desks with a group of legislators at 2 tables in the front of the chamber. And so in order to get a bill to move through the process that it needs to do to become a law, you need to find a legislator that can support that bill and help it move through. And so when we talk about meeting with your legislators, this is one of the times that you would do that in order to help get them on board and understand the problem so that they can push the bill through as needed to try to help get it through to get that problem solved for you. So step 4, what you see is a couple steps that you wouldn't necessarily in this piece participate in as deeply as you did in the others, but they're critical to understanding how things work. The bill would be filed in the House and the Senate. So what you see on the screen is a cartoon picture of a yellow folder with lined white paper inside, leading to an orange arrow symbolizing the transfer of a bill to the photo of a large group of legislators, the same legislators we saw in the last slide, in a half circle chamber, most in dark suits, sitting at dark wood desks with a group of legislators at 2 tables in the front of the chamber. And so once you have written the bill that you would like to, you have found somebody to advocate for that bill, you will file the bill with the House and Senate. The legislator that's supporting that bill will do that. So this is kind of a complex slide, but we thought it was worth sharing because it shows a very simplified process, but clear about how this works. And I'm just going to briefly read it. So it's an infographic in blue that is titled Legislative Process that outlines the process in a circular form from the introduction of a bill through a bill becoming a law. There's a bright blue circle in the middle that guides the wording as a framework of the legislative process with a clear star and a Capitol building in the center. And so just to look at how this bill moves through, there's an overview of the entire process on our graphic. And as we said, there's an introduction, or what they would call referral of bills, committee consideration, the scheduling of and calendars of how that bill will move through, goes through the House floor to a vote, the Senate, executive business in the Senate, bicameral vote, and presidential action. So this is federal. So as Catherine and I talk about state versus federal, most of the work that self-advocates are doing is on the state level because that impacts you most significantly, but you certainly may do some work on the federal level as well in disability advocacy or other issues. So you can see on this slide, we have an asterisk, and that is just to point out that this is a step when you can play a really significant role, and that is in 2 ways: submitting a witness slip or providing testimony. What you see on here is 2 cartoon graphics, one on the left with a hand writing the word testimony in the air in blue, and the second being a drawing of a computer, 2 papers, one with the word submit, symbolizing the submission of a witness slip. So if there is a bill that you've worked closely on, or that you came up with an idea on, or you learned about it after it had started the process and you wanted to support that, you could submit a witness slip in support of that process, or you could provide testimony on that bill. And the witness slip is likely what people would say the easier process. You submit online. Bob, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I've actually done both of them.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, the other witness slip, which is you can I've done it over the computer, which is that you fill out the form which says are you opposed to it or are you in favor of it, and I put sometimes I put I'm in favor of it, sometimes I put I oppose, and then it goes, um, then I click submit, and then it's submitted, and I've also gone down to Springfield and gave uh, uh, testimony about um, uh, some legislation also that had to do with um, uh, um, institutions, and one of the ones that I've done recently is the the uh, the sex education bill that just passed that's a while ago, and I went down to Springfield and gave testimony on that particular bill. So you can see that I've done both of those things.
And if you don't mind, I'm just going to jump in, Bob, and say a witness slip is very simple to find online. But if you need help with that, feel free to contact us and we can walk you through it. I think someone had to walk me through it, so I sympathize. It's just saying how you feel about a bill, and this adds up, and the lawmakers will say, oh, wow, there were 500 people who were so opposed to this bill or so in favor of this bill that they went online and filled out a slip. And testimony is speaking up and saying, oh, I see Christine Beck is saying that the Alliance has a recorded webinar and written resources on how to fill out a witness slip. That is fabulous. So contact us or the Alliance and we will get you in touch. She says to check out the Alliance's website for information. That is great. And testimony is just speaking up and speaking out, right? And saying how you feel about something. The witness slip is more like a vote. You just put a couple of words on it. The testimony, thank you, Amy. The testimony is like telling your story. Bob has actually gone and told his story in person, but you could also tell your story online. You can write something and send it in, and we can give you help with any of those things, and so can the Alliance.
Like I said, I've done both of them.
Okay, Megan?
Oh. Hang on, we're having a little trouble getting the screen to advance.
Uh-oh.
Try it down here. There we go. So what you see in this picture is a large group of legislators in a different chamber, probably 150 individuals in a half circle, most in dark suits and professional wear, some sitting at dark wood desks, and a group of legislators, as in the others, 2 tables at the front of the chamber. And this picture is here to represent, we've submitted the bill, we've submitted testimony or a witness slip. The legislators have reviewed that and considered how they feel about that and how that's going to impact their constituents or us in their community that they serve. And then they're going to vote on that bill. Once that process has completed, the bill moves to the other chamber. So what you see here is just a graphic of the word House of Representatives with a gold arrow that moves to the Senate. So the 2 chambers.
And
go ahead.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
The word chamber sounds very old-fashioned, but it just means a room.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about the legislature, we just mean that it's either going to be discussed in the big room where all the representatives meet or the big room where all the senators meet.
Thank you, Catherine. And so on this slide, what you see at the bottom is a brightly colored graphic with 6 hands raised in the air with the words "Get Involved" and a bottom ribbon of bright colors. And this graphic repeats the process that we just talked about with Bob related to submitting witness slips, providing testimony, or even observing in, as Catherine discussed, the chamber, watching that happen. These are ways that you can get involved regardless of whether or not the bill is going through the House of Representatives or the Senate.
And I'll just add that you could actually go down to Springfield either for, not so much for the vote, but for the discussion, which would take place in what's called a hearing. And that's something else that Mr. Peterson has done, and many self-advocates have done, going down, and even if you don't feel that you want to speak and say anything, you can still watch the process and hear what everyone says about it and be informed.
So in this last slide related to this, what you're going to see is, again, a large setting with about 150 people sitting in a half circle in dark suits, professional wear. And this, again, is representing the voting process on the other side. So the process is just repeating itself. And on this next slide, what you see is a picture of a woman in a black jacket sitting at a large brown desk, signing a bill, surrounded by a diverse group of individuals, smiling and interacting. And we can guess that this is a governor signing a bill, making it law. But, go ahead,
oh,
Kat.
sorry.
No.
I was just going to ask Bob, what happens if the governor doesn't want to sign the bill? What is that called, and what is going to happen?
If he vetoes it doesn't become law. It goes back to the House, and they have to start over.
Yes, they could start over, or I think, did we say it was 2/3? I think both the House and Senate have to vote, and 2/3 of them have to vote in favor, and then it's called a veto override. So they could reverse the governor's decision.
But my point is, if the governor vetoes it, it goes back to the House and Senate, and they have to vote again. And Gabby said that it had to be a 2/3 vote, and that is right. So, but and if they don't get the 2/3 vote, then it dies and doesn't become law.
Okay, Megan.
Thank you, Bob. I appreciate that explanation. Catherine and I are going old school on this. We're going to watch how a bill becomes a law through, wait, just one second and you can click it. Probably through Schoolhouse Rock. You've probably seen this before. What you see on the screen is a cartoon pictures of a white paper rolled into a symbolic bill with a red, white, and blue pen on his front left. The bill, is talking to a cartoon boy with red hair, a red striped shirt, and blue jeans. Behind them, up some stairs, is a large Capitol building with the American flag flying. So Annie's going to start that for us.
Before you start the video, Megan, keep in mind We have to make sure that the video is captioned, because you just realize that now by doing that, then Kathy's gonna have to literally caption every single thing in the video, and there's no way that's realistic. So could you guys just make sure to click on the link and make sure it's already captioned, because that's just not gonna be accessible to everyone.
I don't know that it is captioned. You're right. We may not. Let me click it and just see what I see.
Yeah, just throwing that out there. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. I'm coming directly to you for ask a quick favor. Will you add your name today to join our team? I said from the outset of this election that we're in a battle for the soul of this nation. Who we are.
Are you still sharing your screen, Megan? Because I can't see it.
You can't see it.
Everyone else can.
It says I'm sharing my screen, but maybe I'm not.
Okay, could you stop the video, please, for a second?
Yeah, hang on.
Okay, so do me a favor. You're gonna have to change the view in which you're sharing your screen, because right now it's like only gonna share the PowerPoint. So that's the other issue. That's
You know what? We'll come back to this at the end, Nafi, if we have time. I don't want to get caught up on the technicalities of this, because everybody can watch it online on their own if they're interested. It was really just fun for Catherine and I.
Okay.
Right. And I think we heard a little bit of the music, which may have been familiar to people.
Yep.
I'm just a Bill, only a Bill. Just remember that song, and you can check it out online.
So we want to talk a little bit about civic engagement. And that essentially means, how you can get involved to change things, whether or not it's related to laws like we're talking about today, or other things within your community. And so some examples that we discussed were organizing a protest, sharing your story with a legislator, or starting a petition on an important topic. And what you see at the bottom of the screen is a picture of a shadow of a person with a bullhorn in hand, symbolically yelling, with bright polka dots streaming out of the open horn. So what we'd like to know, just given everything that's been going on in our world, one question that we had is, we thought that some participants may have participated in a protest, and we wanted to know if that's something that people had done. So raise your hand if that's something that you have done, or other sort of very concrete things. Maybe you went to a city council meeting. Things that engaged you in your community, but maybe weren't related to the legislative process.
Oh, sorry, I was muted.
Oh, you're fine, Catherine.
I'm seeing 2 raised hands, so that's very cool.
Okay. We know that there's been a lot of opportunities lately to participate in some of that. And we were wanted to have an opportunity to acknowledge that. So when we talk about civic engagement, what's the most important thing that you can do in terms of civic engagement? And on the screen, you see a large circle in the center with blue and red, stars on top and bottom with the word vote written in the center. And Annie, who should vote? Because vote.
Everyone.
Everyone. Everyone.
Everyone should vote. Sorry, Catherine, but if people don't vote, then their voice don't get heard.
Exactly. It's the most concrete way to get your voice heard consistently. So I know that you've spent a lot of time this week talking about voting, and probably feel more prepared than ever before, we hope, to participate in the voting process.
Yes.
Catherine, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about sharing stories with Bob.
Thank you. This slide says, telling our story. Why is it important? And there is a graphic picture of a brown storybook opened to the middle with all kinds of drawings emerging from the book. including a tree, a house, a light bulb, a bar graph, some young children with hands in the air, and all kinds of other things. Oh, a piggy bank and some clouds and a sun for that matter. So why is it important? We're going to talk a little more about this, but Bob, do you have some thoughts on that?
Yes. When you talk to your state legislator, representative, or senator, they, the most important thing is that you tell your story, because your story is the most impactful thing, because it's about you. It's like they hear about different bills all the time. They want to hear uh, your story and how their how this legislation is going to help you with your story and your life. Because your story is your life.
Bob, you always put things into words so beautifully. Every now and then Bob says something and I run to write it down, and that's one. Your story is your life. I love that. Thank you, Megan. Next one.
1 second, Catherine.
I'll let Catherine take this one.
Everyone lets me take this one because I am insanely in love with this slide. Let me explain what it says and what it looks like. It says, will my story make a difference? And there is a picture of a large number of small red fish swimming together in a school shaped like a larger fish with its mouth open, trying to eat a slightly smaller blue fish with sharp teeth that's trying to get away. The first time I saw this, I thought, what in the world does this mean? But I think this becomes more and more relevant all the time. I think in times like this, when people are talking about people with disabilities not having all of their rights and not being able to make all their choices, with the situation with COVID-19, which the virus, which has unfortunately temporarily taken some of our rights away, just so everyone can stay safe, and with the racial injustice that's being talked about quite a bit. I think that it's easy to get discouraged, and it's easy to think, to look at something like that blue fish with the sharp teeth and to say, how can I fight against this? I'm just a little fish. That blue fish is going to chew me up. That blue fish doesn't care about me at all. But if you're a little fish, like these red fish, and you get together with a lot of other little fish, and you all believe in the same thing, you can suddenly wind up being so powerful that you can get your point across to that nasty big blue fish, and you can change things. Let's see. Just looking to see where I am. I guess we should go ahead with the next slide. Yes, this was where I wanted to ask Bob. This says preparing to talk to elected officials. And it's a picture of a green sign with an upward facing arrow and the word advocates written below. So it's a sign pointing advocates towards their talks with elected officials. Bob, would you like to say something about because you have talked to a number of elected officials, would you like to say something about things that it's important for people to remember?
Yeah, I can do that. One of the things when you go speak to your lawmaker is that you gather all the information that um, that they're gonna ask you. One of the things they're gonna ask you uh, is what the bill number is and who the co-sponsor is. So uh, it's good to have all of that um, in the folder, so you can hand it to your legislator so that they don't have to look it up. But if you don't have who is sponsoring the bill and you just have the bill, they can look up who is sponsoring it. But because the reason I know that is because it has it to me. But it's good to have all that information available if you can. But like I said, if you can't, that's okay. But and when you talk to them, you uh, um, you, you have a lot longer to talk to them when they're in their offices, but when they're in Springfield, you have 15 minutes or shorter depending on what they're doing. But they they are um, they are there to help you, and with you being a voter, they're working for you, and and that's why it's very important to vote.
Thank you, Bob. That we usually say that earlier in this presentation, so thank you for bringing that up as well. Keep in mind that elected officials are working for you, so your role is extremely important. Don't be intimidated by the fact that they have a fancy office. They only have that office because people voted for them. So Megan and Annie, would you like to take the next few?
We wanted to talk a little bit about sharing your story. So a lot of what we talked about today is submitting witness slips, understanding the legislative process, testifying, giving testimony for specific laws or bills that are important to you. But sometimes breaking that down and practicing it can make you a little bit more comfortable. And if we were in a big room together right now, which I wish we were, we could break up at tables and talk about that individually and develop some of these stories. But we thought we would just think of one that might impact a lot of people that is fairly common. And so when we were thinking this through, one of the issues that comes up a lot when we work with self-advocates is transportation. Not being able to get where you need to go, not having the routes available, or the timing of the routes not work well, or there being inconsistency, meaning when you expect transportation to be available, it isn't. And so thinking about how you could advocate for transportation that was more in line with what your personal needs were, so that you could access the community in the way that you wanted to, which is the goal that we have for everyone. And so one thing that you would start with is just knowing it's your story. You're going to share your experience. There's nothing complicated about that. It's really, your story has value in itself, and just spending the time to sort of write down your thoughts about why that particular issue has impacted you. So in this case, it would be your story would be, I want to be able to access community activities, or my job, or the gym, or a school that you're attending, And I have not been able to do that because the transportation has not been consistent. So let's say you rely on a bus system that needs to get you somewhere and they either aren't available to you when you need them, they don't show up when they're supposed to, or there are no routes available for you. So you'd want to write down what you want changed, which might mean more routes, might mean a better route that takes you and makes things a little bit more accessible for you. How you want that changed. So are you going to ask for more routes? Are you going to ask for more consistency? Are you going to ask for more frequency, that those buses be available to you more often? And then ask a legislator and possibly some other self-advocates who have an interest in transportation issues to support you. And just slowly start gathering some support for that idea, which can so greatly impact your life. You know, we all need to be able to get where we want to go in a timely manner. And so that's one way of just using your story, but you can use that same system for any topic or concern that you have. And so we want to ask you, who needs to hear your stories? Annie's going to tell you. You want to tell your stories frequently and consistently so that everyone understands the issues that you're facing each day, and to make sure that everyone who can advocate with you as you work through doing some of this, both legislative advocacy and community advocacy. And what you see here is a picture of a cartoon graphic of a white figure with a bullhorn in the right hand with the words next to the figure in large red letters that says, you want to say? No. Time to listen, meaning my voice counts, and it's time for people to listen to the concerns that I have and make change around those concerns. Catherine, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about some of these concrete examples.
And we will just go fairly quickly through these. This says, the time is now to speak up to elected officials. And this is slide number 1 of 2. And it lists some things which we will go into in a second. But first I want to tell you that the small graphic in the bottom right has a colorful drawing of letters, question marks, the @ symbol, a telephone, a question bubble, a phone, all symbolic graphic ways to reach out to advocate. So the first item is letters, faxes, emails to your elected officials, telephone calls, face-to-face visits with elected officials, hearings, which we were talking about earlier, that you can either attend or testify, and public meetings and town hall meetings. And I know there are people in the audience who have done all of these things. Now, of course, many of these things will be in Zoom or online instead of in person. Bob, I know what you're going to say. How many of these things have you done on the list to speak up to your elected officials? How about letters, faxes, and emails, and telephone calls?
All the above.
How about face-to-face visits?
I've done that too.
And I want to add here, because for some reason Bob hates when I bring this up, but I think it's awesome because I don't have the nerve to do it. He invited one of his elected officials out to lunch, and he came, which I think was very cool. Bob, you have attended and testified at hearings, correct?
Yes.
How about public meetings and town hall meetings?
I've done one or two of those, and as a matter of fact, I did one. I did one recently, and Kathy, you were there.
That's right. Okay, how about the next slide? And this has no pictures, I'm sorry. The time is now to speak up to elected officials number 2. This one surprised me when I thought about it, but when I thought about it, it made sense. Fundraising events. Often elected officials are at fundraising events for different organizations, and if you go, you might have a few minutes to chat with them. Have you ever done that, Bob?
Um, that one I've gone to. I've gone to legislative companies, but I don't think that I've done the fundraising one yet.
Oh, I just thought of an example. I did do that once. I actually met Governor Quinn at a fundraiser for Access Living. He was their guest speaker, and I got to shake his hand. So that was cool.
Well,
Go ahead, Bob.
well, I met I met him too when it came to when it came to when it
You
came
got to meet him when he came through you got to meet didn't you get to meet Governor Quinn at the Speak Up and Speak Out, Bob?
Yeah, I think that was yeah. He came to talk to us about the legislation that we were doing, but I don't think it was at the Speak Up Speak Out. I think it was at the convention.
But so one thing when we're talking about getting involved, one of the things you can do is get involved with different organizations like ours and the Alliance and Equip for Equality. And NAFIA is talking about the Speak Up and Speak Out rally that is sponsored by the Illinois Council on Developmental Disabilities, but it's also sponsored by the ARC and the Going Home Coalition. I'm sorry, that's a lot of names, but you can get information from us on any of these organizations. And NAFIA is in charge of the Going Home Coalition. So we have had a lot of chances to meet legislators at rallies and things. That's a very good point.
And if I could add one thing, and Nadia, you can help me with this too. We had our very first virtual rally since we couldn't all meet in person. So we wanted to continue doing advocacy, so we had to come up with a way to do that. And one of the things I said was, why don't we have it virtually? And everyone at the meeting said, yeah, let's do it. So we had our very first one.
That was a big success. And actually all of those speak to a point a little bit farther down here where we say become active participants. Those are all ways you can become active participants. I want to go back to the second one, call them out on social media. Maybe all of the legislators have Facebook pages, websites. You can contact them through them. And Bob, what did you notice when you went to your legislator's website, Facebook page?
I am. The picture is on his Facebook page.
Yes, Bob is all over his legislator's Facebook page, which is cool, and it's because Bob has developed a relationship with him. You can sign up for their newsletters. And once again, another item that I know Bob has done, serve on statewide committees and boards. Right, Bob?
Yeah, I was on the board of directors for the Arc of Illinois for 9 years. And just recently, or not that recently, but I am now an officer for the National Advocacy Council for the Arcos U.S.
Okay, Megan? And I said I would do this, and then Megan and Annie will finish up. I know we can go all the way to 1:30, but we'll probably quit a little before that. We'll see if there's questions when we're done. So this
Just
is
to
our...
add, hold on one second, Catherine. Hold on one second. Before we move on, just so everybody knows, we do have captioning and interpreting until 1:30. So I also moved with Catherine. We should probably end closer to I would say no later than 1:15, 1:20, so that we have enough time to answer questions, if that's okay with you and Megan.
Sure. We're getting there. We're very close now.
Thank you.
So this is... I made this slide, and I'm not like Megan. I didn't do cool pictures. It says 5-minute week in review, and it just lists Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And what we thought we would ask everyone who did a presentation for the Alliance and ARC series this week to say one thing that they thought was important about their presentation. So Monday, this is our little wrap up of the whole week. Monday, the Alliance presented on Self-Advocacy 101. And this is what they said was the most important. Christine Beck sent this to me. Self-advocacy is speaking up and speaking out for yourself and for other people who can't or don't know how to speak up for themselves. And the pieces of the self-advocacy puzzle are what, how, when, who, when, where, and why. Self-advocacy is everywhere. On Tuesday, the Alliance presented on how voting fits into your life and how do you vote. And this one, we got one sentence from Jae-Jin Pak, and it rhymes. I love this. Voting is your right. Make your vote count by doing it right. So they gave a lot of tips on how to vote so that your vote really is counted. Wednesday, the ARC presented on ways to learn about candidates and issues and the 2020 census. And so Meg Cooch sent us these words from their presentation. Make sure to get to know the candidates through talking with them, looking at their websites, and attend forums. Make sure that your household has filled out the census. It is important to get funding for services and to make sure we are counted. On Thursday, the Equip for Equality presented on voter rights and responsibilities and ways to get around voting problems. And their message from their training was, be an early planner. Make sure you are registered to vote. Decide whether you want to vote in person or by mail, and plan in advance. And I think that also goes back to what Jae-Jin said about doing all the right steps when you vote so that your vote is counted. And then today, I will call on us to say just one thing that we thought was important about what we're talking about today, which officially was called How a Bill Becomes a Law, Civic Engagement, and Spring 2020 Virtual Training Wrap-Up. My one thing would be to remember, whatever you do, that you are important and legislators work for you. Bob, do you have one word of wisdom?
Yeah, one word of wisdom is we all have disabilities, but don't forget, just because we have a disability does not mean that you don't count.
How about you, Megan and Annie?
Well, I've lost Annie to lunch, but what I would say is the process, at least for me, can be intimidating, and to remember that any small step is valuable. And whether it's submitting your first witness slip or going to a candidate forum or just visiting a candidate's website and learning about them, or just starting to write your story and kind of what topics you might want to share with a legislator when you get to that point of wanting to pursue that. So there is nothing that is too small, and to acknowledge that it can be intimidating and it is something that you learn over time. And sometimes baby steps are the way to go, and you'll get better and better at it the more you practice.
All right, so take it away, Megan.
So lastly, even though I don't have Annie here with me, what she and I were going to ask you is, what could you do in the next 24 hours related to advocacy and participating in the legislative process, or participating in your community and civic engagement, like Catherine referred to? And this will be our last opportunity to use that chat box. So if you're willing to share an idea or two about something you might do in the next 24 hours, and then Catherine and I will jump to reviewing what is in that chat box with the group. So it can be something small. It could be responding to a legislator that you've been following on Twitter. It could be going to a legislative website, getting some ideas about who's in your community. Maybe it's going to a city council meeting. Anything that you would like to do, or looking up the city council schedule and planning on how to get there. Something that is doable. Would you mind sharing that in the chat box?
And I'll just say the picture in the center is a blue circular timer with 24 in the center, symbolizing 24 hours. I'm thinking, everybody, that maybe we should move to the last slide, Megan, and then we have a couple of minutes for questions and comments from the chat box. So this is just our contact information. Has my name and email address and phone number, Bob's name, email address, and phone number, Megan's name, email address, and phone number, and Annie's email address. So please feel free to write to any or all of us. And I think when you get you can get a recording of this, and all the information will be on there. But feel free to contact any of us, and any of us can find any other of us. So if you need to talk to Bob and you only can think of my thing, that's fine. Contact me and I will put you in touch with Bob, etc. Nafia, do you have any questions for us from the chat box or comments?
I don't see any questions in the chat box. I just see the answers that you guys asked people to contribute. So if anybody can take this time to please submit their question in the chat box, or if you could please, at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there is going to be a symbol that looks like a hand. Please click on that raise hand if you're interested in speaking your question to us instead. So those are your two options. You can use the chat feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen that has a little text message text message icon, and that you can put your question there. And you can also use the raise hand feature that is a illustration, like an image of a hand. You can click on that at the bottom of your screen as well to raise your hand so we can unmute you to ask your question.
I do want to point out Christine's comment, just in case people can't see it at the end. She responded, flex those advocacy muscles, ask friends and family. This is what she's going to do. Ask my friends and family if they are registered to vote, and if they aren't, ask them if she can support them in registering. And certainly if you have questions about registering to vote or not sure how to do that, the Alliance can help you with that. We can help you with that at the ARC, connect you to the right people, talk you through the process. So if you're not registered to vote and you'd like to be registered and we want to support you in that, let us know and we can give you some guidance.
I think at this point, we probably can say goodbye for now to everyone. And thank you to all of you for attending. And we'll be happy to hear from you anytime.
And happy Friday. Enjoy your weekend.
Just some wrap-up items really quickly before you guys, we leave. We got to do these access things again. Thank you so much to the speakers, Catherine Hammond, Megan Muty, Bob Peterson, and Allison Muty. Allison does have, her last name is Muty, correct?
Yep.
Okay, good. And then also thank you, Letty Bardek, for Spanish interpreting. Thank you, Sabrina Bailey, for being our ASL interpreter. And thank you to Efficiency Reporting for captioning for us today. I just want to once again thank all of our attendees for registering for this event. We will ensure that the recording as well as the PowerPoint presentation is available to you in your email inboxes following this week. Thank you so much to all of you that were able to join us this week, and we look forward to working together in the future. Thank you so much.
Bye.